Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Everybody, welcome back to the Near Memo with me, Greg, Mike Blumenthal, and today our very special guest, Curtis Boyd, who's the founder of the Transparency Company. This is episode 128, if you can believe it. And next week, we're going to have another special guest, Perna Virji, who is the author of a new book on content marketing. And that's going to be an exciting interview, so you'll want to tune in for that as well. But let's dive into this topic today, which is about review fraud, spam reviews, fake reviews, and all the issues surrounding that very complicated topic. And Curtis is an expert. So, and Mike is an expert, and I am to a lesser degree about this topic, but it's something that is near and dear to my heart. Curtis and I co-authored a report a couple of years ago, which was the first one to comprehensively look at review fraud on Google, Facebook, Yelp, and TripAdvisor. And we can provide copies of that to people who might be interested. It's now a couple of years old, but I think it's an interesting report for background. So, Curtis, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Transparency Company and how you got into this very specific role that you're in, policing review fraud and fake reviews.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And thanks for having me, you guys. So my name's Curtis Boyd. I'm the founder of the Transparency Company. It's a consumer protection technology company aimed at detecting fake online reviews. The goal is to help consumers decide which businesses have earned their reviews versus the businesses that pay for fake online reviews. As research has shown that businesses with real online reviews provide better outcomes, better experiences. I got into this serving businesses many years ago. When I was a student nurse, I learned how to remove fake reviews for doctors, ended up switching out of nursing into reputation management, served hundreds, over 1,000 businesses on how to remove fake negative reviews. And while I was serving these businesses, I realized that most fake reviews online weren't negative that impacted my business customers. They were positive that impacted consumers. And there was nothing out there protecting consumers from the situation that was going on presently and still getting worse. That is how I got into this. I ended up building a product that can detect fake online reviews and started pitching various organizations and regulators in the U.S. government and started working on making a change and started working on making consequences for businesses who cheat online. And I'm still working on that today.
So, Curtis, give us a little insight into the signals, factors, variables that your technology looks at to identify review fraud.
Absolutely. So we look into every aspect that we can in regards to content and the profiles themselves, and all of the profiles and reviews collectively, looking for trends. So I'll start with content. Before ChatGPT, a lot of reviewers or fraudsters would just steal content. They would duplicate it, right? They would change out the names of the business and they would just copy and paste. And they would also write, if they were doing it themselves, they would write the reviews across multiple profiles. We would look at stuff like sentiment analysis and, the use of exclamation points. We'd look at their, how efficient of a writer they were. Lots of fun little stuff to see if it was the same author or what have you. Going on, we did a lot of content checks, and then we realized that it's a lot easier to look at behavior. So we would look at profiles. Who else are they writing reviews for? What type of business categories are they? What's the time and the spacing between these reviews? Did they do it all at once and then never touch the account again? Or does it look a pure organic and, they're writing reviews a little bit more regularly? And we formulated basically, I don't know, I say we're probably up to about 110 different metrics that we actually look for when making a prediction on whether these reviews are real and fake. But now that ChatGPT is around, a lot of the fraudsters are using that to come up with content, which makes it a little bit harder, but also a little bit easier because ChatGPT content kind of looks all the same. But that's just my opinion anyway. But that being said, we also look at the impression counts for how many consumers have actually read these reviews and are starting to measure the impact of these harmful reviews, and are providing reporting on that too.
We here at Near Media and the Near Memo have talked a lot about review fraud, and Mike has written pretty extensively on the subject. We have a sense, an anecdotal sense, that it's pretty widespread, even though Google has been stepping up its enforcement efforts. Can you give us a sense of, whatever your best kind of estimate or recent metric is around the degree of review fraud or review spam on Google? How big a problem is it?
Oh, it's massive. The last believe maybe even 5 years, Google has disclosed a 20% year-over-year increase in fake reviews that they've detected. So that alone is pretty massive. The last in 2022 being 110 million fake reviews being or illegitimate reviews being removed off of Google Maps. That's 280,000 fake reviews per day being removed that they've identified. And in my opinion, it's the tip of the iceberg, really. It's most of these reviews, in my opinion, aren't being identified. They're not being properly moderated, and they are impacting consumer spending decisions on who they're going to work with, who they're going to sign the checks to, and what they're going to buy. I think it's getting worse each and every year. And the fact that Google reports a 20% increase year over year supports that.
So let's assume, though, that there's a 20% increase in unreported fake reviews. The reality is that they are limited to certain categories, much more so than other categories, right? One issue is that certain types of businesses get a lot more organic, real reviews. So it's more difficult to have a fake review process in that context. The other is that there's a lot more motivation in certain categories. So I think it's important that people understand this isn't every business, every review. It's a high amount of fake reviews on a certain limited number of businesses.
Well, let's talk about the categories that you just mentioned, Mike. Curtis, where do you see, and Mike, feel free to opine on this, where do you see the concentration of review fraud going on Google?
Honestly, it's everywhere. Not absolutely everywhere, but you see it a lot in the home service industry, in the medical, in the legal, and in the high ticket stuff. You see it a lot as positive sentiment impacts conversion for businesses. It's particularly bad. Personal injury lawyers, criminal defense lawyers, any type of outpatient surgery like laser eye surgery, cosmetic surgery, dermatology. In the home service industry, garage doors, locksmiths, right? HVAC, plumbing. It's terrible out there. And I mean terrible. What we used to see, back in 2021 and, from 10 to 15% in 2023 now has easily doubled.
So is it the case that review fraudsters have some number of normal organic reviews and they're supplementing that with purchase reviews or spam reviews in some way? Or is it the case that people that are doing this, most of their review content is going to be spam? Are they cheating a little bit, or are the bad guys have mostly fake reviews? Do you understand what I'm asking, Curtis?
Yes, I believe I do. What I see on a lot of these is that the mostly bad, it's mostly fake reviews, right? Mostly like 80% purchased versus 20% maybe organic, right? All of them are, not all of them, but a lot of them are overtly fake. And they're using this strategy and creating, listings outside of their where they actually work. And they're trying to garner more business using Google Maps, right? Using various various methods that they can, get more clicks, get more impressions, create more listings, put more fake reviews on those listings, knowing that, right now there's not a whole lot of consequences for them to do that. And that's the goal to change. That's what we're hoping to change.
How common a problem is recently we've seen examples of review extortion where people write negative reviews and then they contact a business and they threaten to flood them with more negative reviews unless they pay. How common
Yeah.
a problem is that? And how recently has that started? I mean, Mike, if you have any perspective on that, I know you've had a lot of anecdotal experience with that.
It's daily.
It didn't seem like this was happening until pretty recently, last few years.
Yeah, beyond extortion, it's often competitors hiring a third party to reduce the visibility or the appeal of a strong competitor. I frequently get calls from people, and this is most common again in the home services, where they're being attacked with multiple reviews per day for a period of months on end, and where it's not so much for payment, but for black hat efforts to try to denigrate a competitor.
Yep. Yeah. Fake negative reviews is really an upsell to fake positive reviews. They sell them for a little bit higher. At first, normally businesses that purchase fake positive reviews, they say, how's this going? Is it going pretty good? Okay, how we're going to try and upsell them. How would you like to purchase some fake negative reviews for your competitors? And before you know it, a few of their top competitors that rank a little bit higher organically, or whether it's on LSA, they're now getting hit regularly with fake negatives, and it's a huge problem.
In a few minutes,
I actually interviewed a client of mine who found out who the competitor was, and he actually invited him out to lunch. And the competitor said, "Oh, I was doing this." When he asked why he was doing it to him, the competitor said he was doing it because he thought my client was doing it to him. So somebody else was buying fake reviews for this competitor. The competitor then went out and bought fake reviews for my client because he thought it was him. So it's a never-ending cycle of retribution. It's kind of like blood,
yes,
blood feuds.
We're going to get into what you can do to respond to this in a couple of minutes. But for the sort of last question in this discussion of kind of the state of where things are, you mentioned, Curtis, LSAs, local services ads. We've seen an increasing number of fake reviews in those. Can you give us a sense of how prevalent that is?
Oh, it is so bad. It's so bad. And I think we all, like everyone in this industry, knows how bad it is. But it's terrible. It's really terrible. There are certain industries where it's really, really horrible. Garage door, locksmiths, right? I mean, the top, they've gamed that entire ad network to the point where you can't really compete on there anymore. You can't get access to those leads. It's terrible. I know real businesses who are suffering, like truly suffering, because of what's going on there. That being said, the top 3 spots in most of the major home service industries, as well as legal, in my opinion, are made up of 90+% fake reviews. It's that bad. It's it's really bad out there.
The tragedy of that whole thing, Greg, is that Google does not have anywhere near the same level of review monitoring sophistication that they have now built in GBP. For whatever reason, LSA is using a different filtering system that is just not capable of virtually any filtering. And only recently did they stop the ability for people to leave non-verified reviews, which will make some impact, but they haven't made any effort to take down all of the unverified reviews that have existed up to this time. So the tragedy is really that Google's left hand doesn't know what their right hand is doing. They should have, joined forces on review monitoring. They didn't, and LSA is a shit show.
Well, one of the things that we discovered in some of our near media research for clients is that beyond the fact that, reaffirming the fact that consumers really rely very, very heavily on reviews, we found out that when LSAs are present, which isn't always the case, they really have a profound impact on consumer clicks. Consumers click on them. They see the Google screened or Google guaranteed badge. They tend to be drawn to those because of their position, the presence of reviews, and they don't, in many instances, they don't know their ads, and so they respond to those, and then they go into the LSA Finder, and they often make a choice out of those listings. So they're very, very potent and effective when they appear for Google and for whoever is the lucky recipient of the clicks. In this case, maybe fraudsters.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.